Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Hello, and thank you for all coming today to the Roundtable orientation for Rusalka. I want to start by welcoming Ms. Ann Duffy and her crew. She's going to introduce you to all of her crew that is making today happen for us. Ann.
All right. Okay, this opera has a Czechoslovakian composer. And so I got a young lady born and raised in Czechoslovakia to come and cook the food for us. So she told her mother, and she got her mother's cookbooks out. She translated the recipes from Czech into English. She came here from Texas and cooked. She came to the United States because she was skating with the Czech ice skating. And when they came to New York, she defected. So here she is, and then she defected from the United States to Texas.
Which is a whole other country. Yes.
So you have a wonderful meal. It's going to be Czech goulash, Czech pepperoni chicken, and Czech strudel. But if she didn't cook it all by herself, we have Linda Ibart, who has made the dessert. We have Kate Berg, Betsy's daughter, and who has cooked for years for this, and is wonderful. And my son Ernest Duffy, who's been wonderful for these.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We'll find out all about the food afterwards. To begin with, I'm Todd Simmons. I'm Executive Director, and I'm emceeing this event today. And we're going to start by going down the line, starting with Robert, asking each one of you to introduce yourself to the audience here and tell us of what you're doing in this show.
Well, Robert Lyle, I'm the Artistic Director and the Conductor.
I'm Bill Murray, I'm the Director. My name is AJ Glukert, and I'm singing The Prince. Thank you. Thank you.
And I'm just Raymond Acedo singing Kodik, Rusalka's father, and not a prince.
I'm Jill Grove, and I'm singing Yeji Baba, the witch, basically. Ursula from the Little Mermaid. Pretty much.
King Trident.
Yeah.
There we go.
I'm Kathleen Helm, and I'll be singing The Foreign Princess.
Let us start with what I think is a great thing about this is that this is a brand new production. And Robert and Bill, would you tell us a little bit about how you birthed this new production?
Well, I was delighted to invite Bill to be the stage director for this because of his extensive experience with the piece. One of the major American productions of this work, other than the Metropolitan Opera, was at the Minnesota Opera, and Bill was involved with that, and then he himself staged the Colorado Opera production, I believe, and the Boston Lyric production, and the Montreal productions. So you can see he's brought a pretty extensive background with the piece to our production, and then we have to address the physical nature of the production. And that is, this is a piece that takes place in, what would you say the time period is, since it's a fairy tale, so to speak?
Yeah, we set it in 1840s, sort of at the height of the Industrial Revolution, because it's an interesting time with what humans were doing to nature at that time. So the costuming for the human world, which is Act 2, is 1840s Eastern Europe, sort of. And then the natural world is any day on the forest floor, basically. And I think we see Acts 1 and 3 happen in nature. And so we chose a pond or a lake inside, surrounded by a forest, and it's as real as possible. We're trying to make this with fairies and nymphs and magic.
Right. The people from the natural world, as Bill has described it, are the water nymphs, which includes Rusalka and her father, and her sisters, of which there are numerous. And then there are the creatures of the woods, and that's the wood sprites. And they come to the water's edge and interact with the water world. And then that same pond or lake in the wooded glen is also abutting the prince's palace. And so when we come to the second act, the world of the humans, and the wedding ceremony that is taking place, then that's where you see the collision between these two discrete worlds and Rusalka's effort to bridge them through going to the witch and being changed. But I won't take everyone's thunder here, and I'll let them talk about the role that they play in making this metamorphosis occur and what the consequences are and things like that. But the question was, how do you then set about creating a new production of it? And so our lighting designer, Don Darnitzer, is very much involved in this. And it's more than lighting an existing set or even a set that we create, because it involves projections. And projections are not necessarily lighting design, they are certainly a part of it. And so the creative process has reached pretty far and wide to collect the images. Bill described it as any day on the forest floor, and yet there are some fluorescent mushrooms that are larger than life.
Yeah.
we do need the phantasmagorical element as well. And so the research that goes into finding those images and then capturing them and then manipulating them to fit the physical elements of production has also been under extensive discussion through phone conferences and interaction with the creative team. And I think you're going to be delighted with what you see. It is an opera that is described as a fairy tale. And the author of this truly beautiful libretto, Yaroslav Kvapil, took a great legend, The Little Mermaid, from Hans Christian Andersen, and rendered it in a uniquely Czech way that is not just a children's fairy tale, but a morality play for adults. And the result is really quite a beautiful, call it myth, call it legend, call it fairy tale, narrative that then Dvorak, Antonin Dvorak, set. Most of you are familiar with his very famous symphony from the New World, and that's his 9th symphony, just as this is his 10th of 11 operas. So extensive exposure to the world of writing for the stage. And what has been a joy for me is to examine more fully the world of Czech opera, Slavic opera. Russian operas are fairly well known. I think most opera lovers know Boris Godunov and Eugene Onegin and Tchaikovsky's Queen of Spades and works like that. The most famous works, Smetana's The Bartered Bride, is the one that captured the public's fancy and held it for about a century. And now these richly romantic works of Dvorak and a slightly more modern iteration, though not far removed from the same period, the works of Janacek, that have now gained their rightful place on the world stage. And so I'm delighted that the first Czech opera production that New Orleans Opera is presenting is Dvorak's Rusalka. It's truly, truly beautiful, romantic music. Bill, what would you add to it?
I think, when I listened to the score, I wanted to capture the romanticism in the music and to really be transportative in the settings of where we are on stage. So I wanted us to break sort of the traditional stage picture that we normally see. So we have sets and we have singers, and they sort of operate almost independently of each other. And I wanted the scenery in this opera to make it feel like it's a more 3D experience. And the projections are really going to help us there. It allows us to change scenes faster so that there's no waiting. It allows us to go to more fantastic spaces. So the forest floor, we're actually in one section, we're underwater. And I think it's something that we don't see these scenes ever in opera. So bringing that fantasy to life is the hardest thing about the production.
For those who have either not been backstage and not known what they were looking at, explain a little bit about how projections actually work.
Sure. So projectors now are so high powered that you can use them to completely. You use the stage as one large projector, as the projection surface. So that means everything on stage has to be of a color that can absorb the projection and not fight against it. So a lot of the projection surfaces are just sort of a light stone gray, I'll call them. So we had to do a lot of painting for the set, so that's the first thing. Now when you project against a surface like the stage, and because the projectors are so powerful, that you often get the projections on the singers as well. So anything that was in the projection, let's say it's a rock, then when a singer walked across it, they would get that rock across their face. So we break that up now using lighting, the technique of lighting, not only from above, but from the spotlights. So whenever we shine a spotlight on someone, it'll break up the projection. Now it's a delicate balance because the more light you add, the less powerful the projection becomes. So it's important to really strike the right balance between the lighting and the power of the projection, the projector that you're using. So we have two projectors for this. I think we've decided on two projectors, one stage right, one stage left, and they'll double each other so that we're in a safety mode. Sometimes the projectors are a little bit temperamental, and we might lose one. So if we lose one, we'll have a backup image already in place. So again, the things that you don't think of, when we're in rehearsal every day, it's really a highly, highly technical show that we're really trying to pull off here.
For those who have not either seen the movie Little Mermaid, which is not exactly the same, or read the book, why don't we walk through the plot of this story? And since our Rusalka is not able to be with us, you, Robert, and Bill, you can take turns being Rusalka, telling us her thoughts.
I always introduce myself as Rusalka, actually.
Well then, we'll let Melissa know you're filling. Could you sing the aria to the moon? Well, the Walt Disney has, of course, made very famous for Americans The Little Mermaid, in the same way that he made very famous for Americans Cinderella, with its traditional French origins, with the Perrault fairy tale of fairy godmother, glass slipper, midnight curfew, and the consequences that follow from it. Hans Christian Andersen wrote a very beautiful story, which it is not unique to Czech culture or Danish culture. It is truly part of world culture, and that is this idea of the water creature that wants to be transformed into a human. And so what are the essential differences between being a water sprite, a water nymph, a water spirit, and being human? At least as has been expressed in the most complete renditions of this legend or fairy tale, it has to do with your mortality or your immortality. And that is, humans have mortal souls, and we die. And these spirits do not. They are immortal. So he took this legend, and the Hans Christian Andersen has a very positive, uplifting ending in which, even though undergoing the trial, she ends up ascending to heaven. She has her own apotheosis, if you will. And that is not the case in this story. And so, Bill, why don't you take it over from there and maybe flesh out that concept of what the differences are in this particular event?
There's the first thing that comes to mind is that Kvapi and Dvorak are very anti-human, very anti-human. Like the human world is where all the evil lies. And then we see that in Act 2, once Rusalka actually becomes a human and she falls in love with a human, the prince, and she leaves. Act 2 is about the entrance of the foreign princess, who is as close to pure sin or evil as we can get in the production, according to as how love goes. So if one is about pure love, the other is about lust. And the foreign princess is lustful. Yes. I won't tell you how the second act ends, but I mean that's a major difference. There's also, I think, although the ending is not uplifting, it's a very appropriate and beautiful ending.
Totally beautiful and poetic sense.
Yeah, to the opera, and it really hammers a moral story much more so than the Disney does about our phrase is the foibles of human emotion. And about how far you should take them, and how much you should listen to your own heart, basically. But I think as a story compared to the Disney story, it actually follows pretty closely. There's a sister element, there's a father element, there's a prince, and there's a witch.
Could we hear from the witch? No, I'm just trying to,
And even with the witch,
I'm here.
Even with the witch, all of the warnings are the same. She takes away her voice.
Yes.
And she says,
It's not. It's my middle name. Yoshi Baba Ursula Slofnik. I don't know.
She not only takes away her voice,
right,
but she curses her. If she doesn't find true love, she's cursed forever, which happens, in the Disney movie as well. So, very
theoretically, she
Jill,
gets her legs.
You might answer or explain for the assembled guests the answer to the question that I asked you, and that is: are you human or are you of another world?
I think I dance between the two. Yoshi Baba sort of dances between the two of the natural world and the human world, or the elemental, the nature versus just humanity, immortal. I think she is probably mortal, but has found a way to stay immortal by either some sort of magic. So she's not of herself immortal, as like Rusalka would be, or some, Vladimir, that kind of thing. I think she is mortal, but she has a good plastic surgeon. And so, I think she's afraid a little bit of the natural world. She doesn't really deal with them very much. So she's much more comfortable with the humans kind of coming to the forest, asking for the potions and the magic. The magic people themselves probably kind of scare her a little bit. So when she finally does see Rusalka and gives her some legs, and so that she can go be out of the water, and then Rusalka pleads to her to help her have this mortal love, this human love with the prince. And, so yeah, I think she dances between the two. I don't think she loves a human. I think that probably back in her day, she was scorned and spurned by a human, so she wants them all dead, I think, in a certain sense. And she takes this as...
Only the men.
The men, yes. Yes. The women I don't really think I care about one way or another, but the men, yes. And so I think when she sees an opportunity to give Rusalka, wants to have this, she's like, okay, fine, I'll give you some legs. I'm going to take away your voice, though. You can't speak to him. If you can get him to fall in love with you, great, but if it doesn't work out, you have to kill him. So, sorry, So she's got her own little agenda happening.
Now, some of you may recognize Joel, who is also recently here in the role of Ulrika in our masked ball.
Another witch.
Another witch. So there's a
typecasting
bit of a theme here.
It's all right. It's all right. I found the niche, exactly. Might as be great at one thing. It's fine with me. Then mediocre at a million. Let's just...
Well, let's go to the magical creature, Ray. And talk to us a little bit about... Tell us a little bit just about like when they were talking about that you are the magical element. in the show?
Yes, Vodnik as the water goblin, he is definitely the most non-human, let's say. But he is also has a lot of human elements as a father, discerning and concerned father, very worried about Rusalka, very worried about why she wants to change and become a human, and sort of, he keeps saying to her all throughout the opera, you'll hear it coming from off stage, you know, woe to you, shame on you, shame on you. And I guess basically the end of the day, it's careful what you wish for, you know, because she gets it and then everything goes bad on her. So I intersperse with humans, I appear, you know, send out a thunderbolt from time to time. And it's funny too because I start off in such a, ready for this, sprightly character.
I've always thought that.
And then it just goes bad real fast. So it's good from a character perspective because I do, as bass, we play a lot of very heavy characters. So this guy starts off lighthearted, but very soon after his daughter upsets him and everything goes terribly wrong.
I want to go to AJ now, and you're kind of between the one woman of the sea and the woman of the earth, who is evidently the woman of sin now.
Right.
So tell us a little bit about where you are in this combination.
Well, the prince, exactly, that's Bourbon Street. My character falls in love with a magical creature, which has its own trials, and you know, I think he sort of thinks, so I found this incredibly beautiful woman that can't speak, what could be better?
Yikes. Yeah, I don't know him, I don't like him.
And then he realizes that's not enough. In the second act, he has this whole thing that he just wishes that they were able to connect more, that maybe once they get married, it will solve everything. And then in sweeps the embodiment of pure evil.
The embodiment of pure evil.
A profoundly evil character that sort of steals his heart. And so he's stuck between, it's sort of, of course, being the tenor that has to go through this polar situation. The magical world isn't for humans to play with because it never ends well. And in some ways, he would have been happier with the foreign princess than with Rusalka, but to what extent magic plays in that, I'm not sure. But my character, while being fully mortal, is the one that goes through the change of being affected, being chosen by the magical world. I don't want to give away too many things, but
yeah, don't do like they did last time and tell us the end, like
right.
the car.
Yeah,
they spoil the
What are you talking about? You didn't know the end. They went to the Cafe Du Monde.
I didn't know that was a secret. Jose loves a beignet, but so yeah, my character does deal with that, the nature of women and how the natural world versus the mortal world plays on one person. So my colleagues think the prince is evil. I blame Vodnik and the magic. He's not himself. Falling in love with this character. He sees her in the woods.
Just like a man.
Exactly. Well, you should see Melissa. It's easy to sell.
Just like the tenor to blame it on the bass.
Exactly. And you're off fishing. It really makes sense. That's my. I guess that's the crux of my character. Is torn between the mortal world and the human world, and neither one can really give you what you want. So I guess you get neither.
No, but I think you get what you deserve.
Yes, I think he does too.
So the foreign princess just comes in, screams at him, and goes away.
I apparently am the embodiment of pure evil. Yes, I come in, I see them together, I get very, very angry. I think it's probably an ego thing. And then proceed to tie him up in knots and get him upset with Rusalka and kind of chastise her. That makes me happy.
Okay. So kind of like Act 1 Tosca.
Love that.
The question for everybody, and maybe led by you, Bill, is how difficult, I asked you this beforehand, how is it that you take, which in some ways can be very one-dimensional with a fairy tale, how do you make that a real flesh and blood storyline work?
Yeah, I think, we talk about this a lot with the singers, for a story that's so fantastical, the emotions are very human. It's a father-daughter story. It's a lover-scorned story. It's something that, like a good fairy tale does, makes you reflect on your own life often. That, from the emotion part, is one. From the singer dramatic point is one, and then from another is trying to translate or trying to almost compete with what the story has been, the more popular story, which is the Disney story. I feel like the operas that are hardest are the ones that people have the most preconceptions of in their head. So, by comparing it to Disney, we do it a disservice and a favor because no one knows the story. But at the same time, we also have lofty goals that we need to overcome. It's the same way when you do Romeo and Juliet. Like, everyone thinks that Romeo and Juliet, they have their own personal story with Romeo and Juliet, and you have to sort of make everyone happy. So I once entertained having Juliet with short hair. Yes, and that's the exact reaction that I got. As if how could Juliet possibly have short hair? And it's those things that you really, they're hard to overcome. They really
Still
are.
be cute with short hair.
Yes. But those things are the hardest to overcome, the preconceived notions. So as much as we like to compare them to those things, it's really hard as a director to divorce those ideas from an audience member.
Adding to that, I want to say, I think that often, because as Americans we are not very familiar with the Czech language, I think that there's a preconception that any kind of Slavic language is ugly and angular, and then the music matches that. So Robert, why don't you tell us a little bit how wrong that misconception is?
I used to jokingly say that people think Janacek's music sounds like his name looks, because it has all these accents on it, and it's that very angularity that Todd mentions when it is so beautifully lyric. And of course there are two accents in Dvorak's name, but at least there is a general association with his romantic music, his famous symphonies and concerti and art songs of that nature. I would add to this discussion by saying that I think the only character that is truly consistent from the beginning to the end is Vodnik. He is the concerned father, and it's easy to tolerate the emotional upheavals of Rusalka because she says, I'm a water spirit, and so therefore I'm really invisible, and I am a creature of the water. I am a wave, so to speak. And when the prince comes to the lake to hunt and to bathe, she says, I can embrace him, but he doesn't even know it. And so she then goes to Yezibaba for her metamorphosis to say, I want to change. And then she puts herself, so to speak, in his path. Yezibaba said, here are the consequences. There's really no way to undo this with a curse, and the consequences are very high. Foreign princess is at least if not the embodiment of evil, she's certainly not someone you want to invite to your next wedding. Because she's gone to the prince's wedding, apparently representing the state or whatever from which she is a princess, and says, that's the man I want. He happens to be the groom, and then sets about doing this. So everyone trips over their own unique agenda. The prince encounters Rusalka once she's been transformed, but there's a scene that precedes that, and that is about the sense that you're in a magic spell. So he's gone hunting as he is wont to do, and he goes to the water's edge, but he keeps saying, there's some force that draws me here. I can't hunt anymore. Take the guns, you men go back to the, I need to be alone here in the aura, if you will, of this magic spell. So he at least starts with a great deal of innocence, and then I think the problem is that the lack of ability to communicate with Rusalka on human terms, which is kind of unfair, but he doesn't know that. He doesn't know what the problem is. But when he is drawn to another woman at his own, who's attending his own wedding feast, that's deplorable.
Yeah.
You know, and but interestingly, at the end of that scene, he is still overwhelmed by the need to be saved from the power of the love he feels for Rusalka and this mystical attraction. And we see that acted out in something that is truly a kind of Liebestod at the end of the opera. I mean, Dvorak knew his Wagner. You get beautiful leitmotifs throughout this piece that lend structure to all of the abstract concepts. And it has that same kind of epic feeling of great forces from the natural world and the human world in their collision and seeking the resolution as great mythology does. And so that's why I think of it not so much as a fairy tale as more of a fable or a story of that kind rather than everything happens by magic. And that's what Walt Disney does, and that's why we have Tinkerbell, you know. But the, you know, in that regard, I think we can talk about it as adults, about what are the consequences of your actions and your lack of emotional control or your lack of respect for the nobility of every other person that you encounter. You see, and so that's where the consequences come to bear. And even, to me, one of the striking moments is at the end, after Rusalka has realized that everything that her father warned her about, the evilness of humans, and everything Jezi Baba warned her about,
He's going to tell me.
that when she truly encounters it, and she goes back to Jezi Baba and she says there's only one way that you can save yourself and break the spell. You must kill the prince. So take this dagger. It's like the queen of the night saying to her daughter, take this dagger and bury it in Zoroastro's heart. She says the same thing about the prince. And Rusalka cannot do it. Now, there's a purity of spirit there that says, even though I know I suffer this eternal damnation, I know the consequences, the pain is unbearable. To me, one of the most poignant lines of the entire opera is when she says, I cannot live, but I cannot die. And so I am consigned to an eternity of this pain. And yet, when the witch says, you can undo the spell, she can't do it. But that's where the beautiful side of the prince comes in. And that is when he comes seeking redemption, seeking release from his guilt. And she says, if I embrace you and kiss you, you die. And he says, do it. This is a moment of pure love when I speak of Liebestod. And I will pay that price for what I did. And I'm going to tell you the end of the opera. And so, no, well, give her a 50% refund. No, but I mean, the thing is, it's not just you wave the magic wand. I mean, and when you're drawn through the many layers of all of these values that we as humans address every day and the consequences of our actions and our thoughts and our values, then you see that. And I think, Bill, that reflects exactly what you're talking about, and that is, yes, it's a fairy tale, but it's so full of natural human emotions. And I don't think there's any other way to play it, to be compelling on the opera stage. Because, you know, whether you're watching The Marriage of Figaro or a lighter comedy or a tragedy, if we don't care about the consequences to the characters on the stage, then we are never drawn across the footlights. If you just watch emotion unfolding without your own personal engagement. So you do want to take sides in this thing at some point, because it's such a beautiful myth, legend, fable, fairy tale, call it what you will.
Yeah, it's a gorgeous, gorgeous opera. I mean, absolutely the most beautiful romantic opera. It's tuneful. It's not at all, well, and maybe some of the Foreign Princesses lines maybe, but you know, it's very melodic, and it's not super modern in any way. It's almost old-fashioned, beautiful, beautiful music.
This thing is 114 years old. It premiered in 1900. 114 years old, and people stop me, you know, and say something about our doing a new opera. No, we are doing a new opera in terms of their experience with that repertoire. But this piece is well over a century old. And you know, if you were asked to go sit through a performance of the Dvorak New World Symphony or the Cello Concerto or the D minor Symphony No. 7 or any of those monumental masterpieces, no one would think twice about worrying about the harshness of contemporary language or something like that. Let's just call it, instead of new, let's just call it unfamiliar.
Let me ask you a question. We keep on comparing this to The Little Mermaid, which it is not. This is obviously an adult mature opera, but this is also something that people can tell their friends about and kids could come see. There's nothing inappropriate about it.
Not at all.
Even for the foreign princess.
Yeah.
Really not that bad.
You just misunderstood.
There were lots of children at Carmen when I went to the matinee.
Exactly. So this is, I think this is if you have family members or that you think would be interested, they would know the tale. If you're wanting to get them involved in opera, this may be a good opportunity.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I will say, when I did this production in Chicago, or not this production, this opera in Chicago, my son came, and he's only 6, and he watched the whole thing, and he knew it was about the Little Mermaid, but he watched the whole thing, and he was just mesmerized by the music, by all the fantastical things, the mermaid quality, the water guy. You know, I mean, he loved me, of course, because he's my son, and that's his job. But but it's very accessible to younger audiences. It's just, the music's beautiful, very melodic, dancing. It's nice. Oh dear.
I don't know what my next question was.
Okay.
Oh, that was my next question. You're not going to be an octopus, though, right?
An octopus? No. I don't think so. I haven't seen my costume, so
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, whatever. So I don't know. Ursula is pretty great. I'll do it on Broadway.
Oh, yes, I know. Okay, let's see if there's any questions from the room. Yes, go ahead.
Thanks. I am a huge, huge lover of the original Mermaid by Hans Christian Andersen. And what I find fascinating is you mentioned the Disney version, which of course completely screws over, I'm sorry, the original. And I had to read quite a few articles in my time about how there's a saccharine ending where the mermaid ends up basically a nice angel. For the people who didn't pay any attention during the story, to the fact that she's not nearly as interested in the prince as she is in getting a soul. That is, mermaids live for 300 years, and if you marry a guy, he gives you half your soul, and then you have a soul and you live forever. And the libretto here, or the story here, I don't know which way to say it, is kind of the exact opposite. She, instead of searching for, divine love, and then failing, but then getting divine love anyway, she searches for sexual love. Well, you don't agree? That was kind of my question.
The prince is looking for sexual love.
Yeah. Well, she's not here. The person singing her part.
That's okay. She's on stage quiet the whole time that I'm on stage.
But she gets instead, and of course the Wagner issue. I can't help but think of when Brunhilde wants to be de-immortalized so she can love Siegfried, which I see very much here. So it's the woman, and instead of seeking for divine love, and then, you get it anyway because you're such a nice person, she seems to sort of go astray. Or is it just that the odds are stacked against her? I can't really quite tell. So I would love your take.
In the beginning she is obsessed with death. There's this little moment where she said, why I want to become human is because they cease to exist, and she's completely fascinated with that. when her father warns her very much against it. I think that Rusalka, though, is more of a romantic. It's not necessarily the prince that she's in love with, but the idea of falling in love.
Yes.
Which she does.
Yes.
But she's very ill-equipped to handle what that means.
But she's in love with love.
She's in love with love.
Yes.
Yes.
Not the sexual side, though.
No.
I mean,
No.
her desire for the prince is very pure. Like,
Yes.
that is the most pure moment of the opera, that first meeting.
Yes.
Where they come together, and it's this mystical meets human.
Yes.
But it's
Thing.
a mortal love.
Well, is it? She's part of it, so it's not all mortal. At least a quarter mystical love.
But in the second act, there's her aria is about how she is very ill-equipped to handle what's happening to her. Like, she has the body, and she thought that that would be enough. But clearly what she needs is what the foreign princess has, which is passion, which she's missing.
Good way to say it.
Right, she doesn't have.
She misses, yes.
She's a best. I mean, she can't speak. She doesn't have a.
She's
Yeah.
too pure.
She's too pure. You know, not so much sexually, but just human passion, blood flowing, that heat. She can't do that, and she can't provide that to the prince.
No.
And the prince can't understand that. But then we have, like, you know,
I
very
can.
heated woman. You know.
I can provide it just fine.
Go, girl.
So.
Okay, other questions?
I had a question.
John?
Okay. You mentioned the Chicago production.
Mhm.
I know it was a couple years ago probably, which I missed. Were you also rich?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
Is this going to be a similar type of production?
I don't think so. I mean,
They're both traditional.
they're both pretty. They stay pretty traditional along the lines of of magical, mystical world, of human world. But no, there will be definitely some different. You know, as far as the witch goes, I mean, you know, that you can play her in so many different ways. That's why she's so much fun, because you can either take her very seriously, very sincerely, or you can kind of play her sort of comically, which we sort of found a thing between both of it, because, you know, it's a little heavy story. So let's get a little levity going, and there is a little bit of levity with the witch in this production. So.
Looking forward.
Yeah, I had two questions, one for Robert, one for Bill. Robert, has the performance of the opera, has it ever been done in New Orleans before?
No.
Okay, no. And Bill, is your professional training opera or is it theater? What is your background?
I was a singer. Well, I was a cellist for like 9 years first, and then I moved into singing. And then, unfortunately, I moved into directing. And then I moved into directing after. And actually, AJ and I were at the same program. I was there a few years earlier than AJ.
So you were primarily music background as opposed to
Yes.
technical.
Yeah.
Technical.
And now I do more. I do a lot of industrial work, industrial shows, which pays the bills, but it's not artistically the most. You know, you get your artistic fulfillment from theater or opera, which is where I do, and then you pay the bills with the industrial work.
Right, thank you.
Miss thing?
Nope. Not one bit.
He gets to sing all of the roles to us. It's a fun
Singers can be crazy. I was a crazy singer.
Well, it's hard.
You know, it's hard. You get the slightest sniffle, and you have to hold yourself up, and you're worried about your auditions, and and the day I decided, I just remember this, the day I decided I'm not going to do it anymore, I just felt like $1 million. Like all of the pressure was lifted off my shoulders. I could enjoy life again. I could have drinks, and seriously, I could drink milk and do those things.
I will tell you though
But it needs to be, sorry.
No, please.
It needs to be also stated though, that it's wonderful for singers to have a director who's sensitive to the requirements of singing. Because then when you ask them, or when they ask you to do something, you know, you can say, hey, look, you know, it's a tricky part musically, or it's a tricky part physically, whatever. that they're sensitive to that, because they can appreciate what you're trying to do.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. I mean, it's such a luxury for us to have someone that's like that.
Yeah, I asked AJ, can you sing that high note laying down? And he was like, oh, no problem. And I was like, okay, then let's lay down.
But the fact that is, that's, I just did a production with a famously difficult director in San Francisco, and those things don't even cross their mind. Oh, you can't sing this.
You mean there's someone worse than Robin?
Oh. No, I mean,
okay,
you can't sing a high C rolling around on the ground, or we've decided to make this entire aria off stage. I mean, that sort of thing. But when you have someone that lived on the stage, that's never a question. And you know that anytime they ask you to do something, it comes from I've done this, I've seen this done, this is something, and that's such a luxury.
Yeah, it's difficult.
Excellent. I'm sure you may have more questions. At this point, I think the ladies are ready for us in the other room. I want to thank our panel today. Thank you all. Further questions on the presentation.
Spastemne, spastemne, spastemne.